Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Double D Report. This week, me and Dean are going to be talking about, obviously, our picks, how me and him are both mediocre, uh, coaching changes, as per usual, conference championships, and even the one upset game that we need to talk about. Dean, you want to start off?
We can go one by one. There was some really good games this week. Obviously, there was a couple of one very big upset that we'll get to. But first game was the Saturday day game, quote unquote day 4 o'clock game Eastern. Houston visited Kansas City. Kansas City obviously coming off of their number one seed bye. The line for this game that we were able to get it at was 8.5, which is significant because a lot of other bettors got it at 9.5. And I'll tell you why that's significant in a second. Because the Kansas City Chiefs won by 9 points, right? Kansas City won 23-14. Bettors were either very happy or very depressed by this half a point line because Kansas City ran it out of the back of the end zone for a safety in the closing minute of the fourth quarter, which basically determined the spread for all of Vegas. It's a little frightening how good Vegas is at these spreads. But I know, Derek, this was a big game for you, so I'll let you go first.
But I picked KC, which was also fortunate a little bit because they were also my lock of the week. Obviously, I did say that they would cover the spread because I just didn't think they were going to lay there and die, like I said in the previous podcast. So, simple as that, that Houston wasn't ready for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, so I did take the Texans plus 8.5, lost by half a point, obviously. I did get correct basically on how the game would go. The game was close enough, pretty much, and it was a very consistent, kind of a boring game almost, where I believe I said verbatim that Kansas City would win this game in easy fashion where they would never feel threatened by Houston, and that was pretty much the case here. I obviously was incorrect by half a point, but the premise of what I said was still accurate. However, there is no almosts in betting. I did lose by half a point. So I'm going to take the L on this one, even though I was pretty spot on in my analysis. But whatever, whatever. The number one Kansas City Chiefs continue their movement towards a third consecutive championship. And I'm sure we'll talk about them later, but they just seem to be rolling here. We can go into the second game. This is probably the most shocking and surprising game that happened all week. It was definitely phenomenal in every aspect, but it showed really where the Detroit Lions' glaring issues were pretty much all year. The line for this one was pretty hefty. It was Lions minus 9.5 here. So Vegas and a lot of other people were expecting the Lions to come out. They were the other bye team in the NFC to come out for a blowout here. Kind of the opposite happened. Washington won 45-31 here. They not only, did the upset, they not only took over this game, but they won by 14 points. They won by 2 touchdowns here. I'll go first. This was my second loss of the day. I took the Lions minus 9.5. I thought they would come out absolutely screaming on offense, and I wasn't wrong here. Their offense definitely had a lot of miscues. There was quite a few turnovers that really played Jared Goff later in the year, and it was very prevalent this game. But their defense was just absolutely horrific from top to bottom, and it showed. The Commanders pretty much steamrolled them on offense. So I got that one wrong. That's my second one in a row wrong. Lions minus 9.5. Derek.
Yeah, so obviously, as we're continuing the trend from what happened at the end of the last podcast, me and Dean proceed to pick the opposite teams, and I picked the Commanders plus the points because I just thought that Jaden Daniels would have kept it close, and also, as I said, David Montgomery coming back, and a bunch of injuries that have riddled the team to where it was tough for them. Also, towards the game, like Jared Goff obviously had a couple of his miscues and such and such, but the main focal point was that they couldn't stop them. They just couldn't do anything on defense. It's like they didn't even want to go out there and play defense, and I don't know who to blame for that, but just to watch it and see a rookie quarterback do that to them is just shocking.
It's just tough because we talked about it all year. They were basically, for most of their defense, on their third stringers, right? For a lot of these different positions, they were plagued consistently all year with injuries on the defensive side of the ball. And it showed in some key games, like the one that comes to mind is the Buffalo Bills game when they played them in the regular season, where that was a shootout, but Buffalo pulled it out. I mean, their defense just really couldn't stop a dynamic offense. And I'm going to give a lot of props here to Jaden Daniels. This kid is an absolute stud. We've been saying it all year. He is going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. He deserves it, and he's continuing to take the Commanders where they haven't been in quite some time now. So this is definitely a huge win for the Commanders. Sucks for a Giants fan where now every single team has surpassed them in the division, and it's not, and nobody's looking back here. Even more sucks for the NFC East that we're all going to have to play Jaden Daniels for the next 10 plus years, injuries and God willing, because he's a very talented kid and it's very fun to watch, but really showed how good the Commanders' offense is, and no doubt about it, the Eagles are going to have a tough time come that conference championship. Um, which kind of segues into the third game here, Derek. It was the Los Angeles Rams at the Philadelphia Eagles. This was the first game of Sunday. The line was Eagles -6.5. I'm gonna get out of the way first, and I will say I did take a bold pick here. I took my lock of the week as the Rams. I was not too far off. I really wasn't. They played a very good game in the fourth quarter to claw their way back. They just had some miscues along the way, and the Eagles defense held up, so props to them. But I also did take the Rams +6.5. That hit by half a point, so half a point loss earlier in the week, half a point win later in the week, so that makes me feel good here. But Derek, I'm going to just give it over to you because I know you're the Eagles fan here.
Yeah, so pretty much, obviously, I'm very happy that the Eagles won. Very, very happy that the Eagles won. We're going on to the conference championship. Thank you, God. But obviously, we did play. We did play very good. We ran the ball very well. Our O line stood for most of the game, besides when Jalen got sacked a lot. And it was good to see. Obviously, even though Jalen had one of those games to where he didn't throw the ball much, it was fine. But as going off the spread, I'm pretty fucking pissed off because if Jake Elliott would have made two out of the two field goals out of the fucking ones that he missed, otherwise I would be good. I would be 3-0 right now, and yeah. So, motherfucker, fuck him.
This is true. He did miss 2 extra points, which is pretty crazy to think about. And I'm only going to give him a pass because, for anybody who didn't watch, it was a snow game.
Nah,
The
fuck him.
weather was
Fuck him.
look, I'm not saying that's an excuse per se. I'm loving it because they won by half a point, the Rams. But yes, it was a snow game. It was actually a pretty aesthetically pleasing game to watch just because of the snow. This is playoff football. Everybody loves to watch snow games, especially this time of year. Um, but yeah, Jake Elliott really fucked the spread there.
So, fun fact, Dean, is that it's kind of crazy to even say this, is that every single time Jake Elliott, I saw it on a Barstool podcast, every single time Jake Elliott misses a field goal, the Eagles win a playoff game.
I mean, look, that's such a stupid stat because missing field goals in any capacity does not help you win, especially in that last minute drive where the Rams had a chance to get a touchdown. That PAT really would have fucked you. But I think that we can talk about this just briefly, Derek. Are you concerned about Jalen Hurts injury?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yes, I'm obviously concerned about Jalen Hurts' injury, purely because I'm afraid that he's not going to play. I'm afraid, because God, if we have Kenny Pickett in this game, we're losing. And if we have fucking I'd rather have the third string quarterback in than have fucking Kenny Pickett in, because otherwise we're gonna fucking lose that game. Obviously, his injury scares me. The one thing I will say though is that if he does play and his knee is hindered in the slightest, it's gonna be hell. We're gonna have to figure out a way to protect him.
Well, at the same time, if Jalen Hurts is hindered in any way, but by the way, he is still playing. Let's just get that out.
I know that, Dean, But if he doesn't,
No.
we're fucked.
So you don't have to say if the guy's gonna play, right? But if he is hindered in any way on the offensive side of the ball, if I'm the Commanders, I'm absolutely engage aiding every single play. Every single play, right? And then if Saquon beats you by a hole, if the offensive line, pushes guys out, which they're definitely capable of doing, being the number one offensive line in the league, look, so be it then, right? But I think the biggest concern with the Eagles here is you don't want to get into the Commanders game, right? The Commanders game is a very high-powered offense, a very high-scoring game. If that happens and you have a Jalen Hurts that's less than, let's just say, 75% now, you're not faring too well on paper. So this is going to be a huge game next week where the defense, in my opinion, for the Eagles has to really have the game of their lives. All right. Who knows? Maybe we get another snow game.
Honestly, I would love to have a snow game. It would be so good. Please, God.
Yeah, yeah. But Eagles win NFC Championship, Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders. Absolute nightmare fuel for a Giants fan.
And Cowboys fans.
Fuck the Cowboys. I'm personally just hoping that a snowstorm blows over and buries all the players on the field. But nonetheless, we're going to get into by far, most definitely, the game of the week. We talked about it all of last week. Baltimore Ravens at the Buffalo Bills. For lack of a better term, this was almost like another AFC championship game within the AFC divisional round. High-powered offenses, two MVP candidates in Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen going at it. The line for this game, pulling it up really quickly, I believe, yep, it was Ravens -1.5 here. Me and you, as consistent as it was all week, we're on opposite ends of the ball here. I took the Bills +1.5. I just thought they were going to win the game outright, which they wound up doing. They wound up beating Baltimore by 27-25, which we'll talk about. But Derek, well, can you remind me, what did you pick again?
I took the Ravens -1.5.
Oh, okay, that's right. You took the Ravens -1.5. That's right. One of our main points of talking last week, it was actually a mailbag question, was whose legacy was on the line almost this game, right? Because Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen both have had pretty great careers so far. They just haven't been able to get to the next step, both of them. And I think me and you both aired on the side that this was a bigger game for Lamar Jackson just because of how it's been happening the last few years within the playoffs. And I think we both agreed that Josh Allen's legacy game is going to be against the Kansas City Chiefs this upcoming week. I personally want to start off by saying I don't think this game was entirely on Lamar Jackson's fault, right? He actually did outplay Allen if you look at the stats, statistic wise. However, he did have that very costly fumble in the second half that was a fumble six, which pretty much destroyed all momentum that Baltimore could have had on that drive. And then turnovers. This is how it happens every single year for the Ravens, right? He threw an inexcusable pick in the first half. He had a pretty bad fumble that led to a fumble six in the second half. And then Mark Andrews, wide open in the middle of the field, turns to go up the field and fumbles in the middle of the field, giving the Bills back here. I think just from what I watched and from my perspective, the Ravens beat themselves this game. I don't think the Bills outright beat the Ravens. I think the Ravens just beat themselves. And this is completely even excluding the Ravens' final drive, which they went right down the field, scored a touchdown, and Mark Andrews dropped his 2-point conversion to tie the game. Look, I just think they continue to beat themselves in these playoffs. Turnovers are killers, and especially when it comes to the playoffs, you just have to limit those. Turnovers are absolute killers in the playoff.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I would say that the Ravens did, in fact, beat themselves. One thing I will say before I even go into the game is that Lamar, obviously, he did have his turnovers during the game, but he did play a good game. He had a clutch last drive. It's just at the end of the game, Mark Andrews dropped that 2-point conversion, which could have tied the game. It's inexcusable. One thing I will say, though, is that they can't, in these big games, they just keep on choking and not being able to finish it off with, obviously, as what you said, the turnovers, the pick, the Mark Andrews fumble, and even the Lamar fumble six, because it just ruined them the entire game, and pretty much it's inexcusable, and that's what they have to do to fix themselves next season.
Yeah, it's tough because we've talked about it. Putting the weather aside, because this was also a mini snow game, it did snow a little bit, but that doesn't really matter to both these teams because they play in cold weather anyway. So I don't want to deflect that for the reasoning here. It's just the turnovers are such kills. Three turnovers to the Buffalo Bills zero. I mean, the defense here was clearly a factor for Buffalo. Good on them. They forced two fumbles and then got that interception early in the first, but this was by far the best team that the Ravens have had probably over the course of Lamar Jackson's career, and they just still couldn't get it done. It's frustrating. If you're a Ravens fan, it's frustrating. If you're Lamar Jackson, if you heard him after the game, it's frustrating because he just quote unquote said he's tired of this shit. Not talking about the team in general, just talking about himself making some inexcusable decisions, making some turnovers here and there. It's a tough loss. It's a tough pill to swallow for the Ravens, especially when you have all of the tools, in my opinion, this year to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't want to hear like that Lamar Jackson's a bad quarterback at all. He's still, if not top three in the league, if not the best.
I honestly think that he's the best quarterback in the league.
You can definitely make that argument. So just a frustrating game for the Ravens and their team as a whole. Good on Buffalo. They kept home field advantage. They grinded it out. They won a pretty tough contested game. And they're going to have what we talked about last week. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are going to have a legacy game against the Kansas City Chiefs next week.
Please God beat the Chiefs. Please God.
I think 95% of the country will be rooting for Buffalo.
Moving on from the NFL, we're going to go on to college football. In fact, this past Monday, there's a college football championship game. Notre Dame versus Ohio State. I did pick Notre Dame to win. They did not win. They got steamrolled, which is what no one wanted to see, but it did happen. Obviously, Ohio State just outplayed them, and at the end of the day, it went down to coaching. It shows how good Ryan Day is, with even Judkins scoring twice, Jabari Smith scoring twice, and just overall on the defensive front, they held them. They did so well majority of the game. The only thing I will say is like at the end of the game is that they just let up. I felt like that's why the score looked close, is that they just didn't. I'm not saying didn't try, but they just didn't put the best efforts out in the fourth quarter, which didn't mean anything. They had the game already locked up, but still, overall, good win for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think the story here was Ohio State, rolled through this college football playoff. They won every game in convincing fashion. You're right, Ohio State, let up a little bit in the fourth quarter, but Notre Dame's main blunder here was the second. The second quarter wound up being 21 to nothing in favor of Ohio State, and that's after Notre Dame came out and had a phenomenal first drive. Riley Leonard is an absolute dog. That kid is a stud. He really came out and pushed the ball heavy, ran the ball down Ohio State's throat, and even their defense held them. The second quarter just completely derailed their season and derailed the championship game. But I think it's just props to Ohio State absolutely steamrolling everybody in this playoff, whether it was Oregon, who was the number one seed, or whether it was their first couple of rounds. I mean, it was just domination from start to finish. So they definitely deserved it. I think Judkins is going to be a stud. Will Howard is now getting some looks when it comes to the draft. I don't know if it's deserving. I don't think he's that great. I think he was more or less a product of the team around him. But definitely, if you're a Notre Dame fan, I think you have a lot to look forward to, just because your young coach, for lack of regardless of how the last game ended up, I thought he coached almost a perfect season. So you definitely should be proud here. It's just Ohio State was too good defensively, offensively. They pretty much dominated this whole game other than the first quarter.
Yeah, overall, they did obviously what you said. They did get steamrolled pretty much majority of the game, which did make the spread of the game not so close. I believe I don't remember exactly what the spread was, but I know for a fact I didn't cover.
I'm pretty sure it was on the higher end. I think it was around -6 or -8 here, but Ohio State did cover in, pretty convincing fashion. They obviously got that late field goal to pretty much clinch it up, but it never really felt that close in the fourth, unfortunately. And it's a little upsetting for a college football championship game where pretty much the whole game you didn't really feel it was any competition. I mean, after the third, this one was pretty much over.
Yeah, one thing I will say though is that this college football playoff system that they recently added, the 12 team, I think is fucking amazing. Purely because I feel like it gives more teams opportunities than what it did in the past.
Yeah, it's definitely much more exciting. It gives a lot of teams opportunities where, as in the past, they wouldn't. Like, look at it, for example, in this championship, it was a 7 versus 8. In the old format, when it was just 4 teams, neither of these teams would have been in or having an opportunity, right? So I think this playoff allows more teams to come in and it allows you to actually crown a legitimate winner rather than if it was just 4 teams and you have a team that's on the cusp at a 6, 7, 8 where you thought they could have made it all, didn't. So yeah, they definitely made a very good choice in this college football in making it a 12 man. And I look forward to next year because this was definitely a very exciting year.
Overall, congratulations to Ohio State for winning that championship game. But moving on from college football, we gotta go to the NFL for a little bit. There's been one coach in the NFL who we've been talking about a lot. He is known around the league as one of the best coaches in the league, but from what I've seen is that he hasn't done his job. He hasn't taken him far, and that is Dan Campbell. Don't get me wrong, Dan Campbell's a great coach. I love him as a coach, but I think that this year might sound absolutely insane is Super Bowl and bust. Purely because they've the past couple seasons, they even though he with all the assets that he has on his team, I feel like he should be taking his team to the championship, to Super Bowl. Just simple as that. Don't get me wrong, he's a great coach, but I feel like that in this present day NFL, you need to bring a team to a Super Bowl.
Okay. My opinion is that you're an idiot. Just plain out, right and simple, right? So if you go back to when Dan Campbell originated on this team, right, which was, if I'm not mistaken, 2019. The Lions went 3-12-1, Derek. 3-12-1, all the way to setting a franchise record, mind you, this year with 15 wins. And you're telling me next year, if he doesn't win the Super Bowl, you fire him? I think you're stupid. This guy went 15-2 this year with pretty much the whole year, second and third string defense. Not to mention, he was in the best division in football, where two other teams went 14-3 and 11-6. And they went 6-0 in the division. In no way, shape, and form is next year a do or a die for Dan Campbell. You know how many teams in this league would kill for a coach of his caliber? This guy, this guy 4 or 5 years ago took the Detroit Lions as the worst team in the league, a perennial loser, by far the worst team in the league. Couldn't even watch them because you would have agita and you would want to throw up. To being by far the best team in the league this year with second and third string defenses. I just don't see how you can, any way, shape, or form, even make the assumption that he should be fired next year in a Super Bowl or bust year. I get it. You want to see results, and that's fair, right? But at some point, you have to look at other factors. If the Detroit Lions had a lot of their defensive players, I think they win this game pretty easily because Washington's defense wasn't great, and Detroit's offense is still electric. It's going to be a little bit difficult of a year next year on top of that because not to mention, you're going to have to do free agency and whatnot. Every single one of his coordinators has left. So he's going to have to create a whole new coaching staff all by himself now.
Don't get me wrong, Dan Campbell is a great coach, but obviously with the way the NFL is nowadays is that the your system, if it's not running properly or not leading you to championship games, you're done. That's how it is nowadays. Unfortunately, that's how it is. For example, even bringing it back to my favorite team, in 2018, the Eagles won their first Super Bowl with Doug Peterson. Fast forward to 2 years after that, he got fired because he wasn't producing. It's just how it is. At the end of the day, there's nothing Dan Campbell could do besides all he needs to do this season is lead his team to the championship game. He has the assets on his team. He just needs to actually follow through with his assets.
Look, I understand where you're coming from. I just think you're stupid. I'm sorry, you can't justify firing a coach who wins the division, right? You just can't. Do we think realistically the Lions are going to be front runners next year to win the NFC North?
Dean, the NFC North is a tough division. They have the Packers and the Vikings, two very hard teams.
And they went 6-0 in that division this year. 6-0. And they are the best division in football. 3 teams over 11 wins. 3 teams in the playoffs. All 3 teams eliminated in their first game of the playoffs. Look, I get what you're saying, right? We're in a very result-centric society where if you don't see the results, you have to be doing something wrong. And that's just the way it's looked. In the Eagles scenario, Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl and was in one of the toughest divisions in all of football. This is a division we're talking about, the NFC East, that hasn't had a repeat division winner in 17 years. And they went to Nick Sirianni. You're telling me they wouldn't be better off right now if they just kept Peterson rather than go to Sirianni? I think you can make that argument. Sirianni is not that great of a coach, and he is surrounded by insane talent. And Peterson won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles at quarterback.
God bless you, Saint Nick.
Oh, Jesus. Look, my point is, I get we're in a very result-centric society where if you don't win a Super Bowl in a certain amount of time, especially when you're this good consistently, that people are going to start asking questions on whether you should move on or whether the team should move on or make changes. I think there's other avenues on the team that could be changed rather than the head coach, who is conceived by many around the football league to be the best head coach in the league. Right? It's saying something that almost every single one of your coordinators, offense, defense, defensive lineman, linebacker coach, are all going elsewhere because they are coveted in the NFL. And that's because they're under Dan Campbell. I think the Lions would make an enormous. I think, and this isn't even a bold take, the Lions would rather, and they should rather, move on from Jared Goff before they fire Dan Campbell. I just want to see a year. And look, this is the NFL. This is life. Injuries happen. Shit happens. I'm not trying to make any excuses. But this guy was down to his third stringers on defense for the majority of his defense, right? Pretty much the whole secondary and a lot of the defensive line. So I think they need to do a lot of conditioning this offseason, maybe make some moves here and there. They're obviously going to hire a bunch of new coordinators to go under Dan Campbell within the system. I do not think his coaching is an issue. I think, if anything, it's personnel, where you have to stay healthy, one, and two, if you're not healthy, you're going to have to prepare for that.
How I see is that, and this might be crazy to say, is that some coordinators make coaches look good. It's for all you know, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn could leave, and they could be, and Dan Campbell could show his true colors. It's Don't get me wrong. Obviously, the two running back personnel is great, but I just think that it's possible because sometimes in the NFL it does happen is that he's overshadowed. No, his coordinators overshadow how good he is.
I think we're going to find out next year because Ben Johnson's going to Chicago, who is supposedly an up-and-coming team, right? Once again, in the best division in football, where that division is crazy. So we're going to see what he could do with Caleb Williams. And then you have Glenn going over to the Jets, who the Jets are a whole nother issue, right? So we're going to see what they could do next year. But I can't sit here and you know how many teams immediately today would fire their current coach just to get a shot at Dan Campbell coaching their team? I would say at least half the NFL.
Would you fire Dable for Dan Campbell?
I would, Derek, I would kill you right now through our monitors to hire Dan Campbell on the Giants. And you know what? I guarantee you after this year, you would fire Sirianni for Campbell.
If Nick Sirianni wins us a Super Bowl, then maybe, I don't know.
Sirianni's not winning a Super Bowl. Let's move on.
Obviously, what I'm saying is a hot take, I'd say. So, in general, we'll just see how it goes next year. But moving on from this topic, we got to speak about one person who is kind of on the cusp of history once again, is Saquon Barkley. Obviously, this season he had a chance to break Eric Dickerson's rushing record, but he didn't. But he can still break the post regular season and postseason rushing record, which is 20. Let me just double check. Which is 2,476 rushing yards, and he is at 2,329 with potentially 2 games to play. What I'm pretty much asking you here, Dean, is that do you think that with Saquon having around 134 rushing yards, do you think he's going to break this record?
I do. And I think it's going to be against the Commanders just because he's the whole offense. And they're going to absolutely lean on him so he's going to run the ball 25 plus times against the Commanders because he has to. because he has to, right? That's how their offense is built. Time of possession, best offensive line in the league, run the goddamn ball down your throat. That's how the Eagles operate on offense. And there's no way in hell they're going to change that operation. So I do think he breaks it this game. I don't even think he would need the Super Bowl.
I don't think he's going to get it this game. Purely because, obviously, the we versed the Commanders twice. They're going to be stacking the box. It's going to be hard for Saquon to run the ball this week. Obviously, he's obviously what you said, running behind one of the best offensive lines, which is correct. But I think it's going to be very tough for him to get it this game, purely because of we versed them twice, in general. But a stat that I do have to bring up though, which is kind of fucking crazy to me, is that every single time that Jalen Hurts throws for 115 or 120 around there, more than that we lose. Around that margin, we win.
Oh,
You can look it up if you don't believe me.
I mean, no, I don't need to look it up. All in my head, all I'm thinking is that's absolutely pathetic.
It's not Jalen's fault that we're running the ball well. Like, if you really think about it like this, Dean, is that if you don't have to throw the ball, why throw the ball?
I never said it was his fault. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that's a pretty pathetic stat. He's the offense, Saquon. He's And the only way I don't see him breaking it this upcoming week, because they are going to run the ball 20 to 30 times. That's just the way their offense works. That's just the nature of how the Philadelphia Eagles operate under this current offense, especially with Jalen Hurts hindered with injury concerns. The only way I don't see him getting to his to that number 134 you said, the only way I don't see him getting that is if what I said earlier happens, if the Commanders are sending engage eights every single play. And it's possible they could do it. I would give so much props to Dan Quinn and the Commanders if they just send engage eights every play. My God, the balls and cojones on them. That would be sick to watch. Just Jalen Hurts crumble and break his leg. That would be
All right,
phenomenal.
chill, 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 chill.
But I don't even see that stopping Saquon. This is the best offensive line in the league. They're making holes that you could run through, Derick. So I don't see him being stopped in any way. I think the only way the Eagles would lose this upcoming game is in an offensive shootout if your defense collapses. Because I don't think anybody's stopping Saquon.
I appreciate you for giving us Saquon.
Don't appreciate it. I fucking hate you.
One thing I will say, Dean, though, is that God forbid if Saquon takes us, because he is leading our team, if Saquon takes us to the Super Bowl and we do win the Super Bowl, one thing I will say is that I feel like that by him winning the Super Bowl, it's beneficial towards running backs because I think that the running back market is just going to go up even more because it's going to show that, hey, we need running backs on our team to be a good, complete team.
It's to be decided, but at the same time, there ain't many running backs like Saquon Barkley out there. And you're going to have a tough time finding them, especially paired with this sort of offensive line. Because Saquon was good with the Giants, and they had a bottom five offensive line. Look at what he's doing. No offense to Saquon at all. The guy is tremendous. Shifty when healthy, speed off the charts, power off the charts. But I'm going to give him a little slight here. I think you could put 75% of running backs behind the Eagles' offensive line right now, and they would still do a pretty great job. So I don't think so. If anything, to counter your point, I don't think the running back market changes. I think the emphasis on the offensive line market changes.
I do agree with that. I do think that offensive lines are important to where if you look at it, that if you have a good offensive line, everything is complete.
It's proven. Look at the Chiefs. Offensive line is off the charts. Look at the Eagles. Offensive line is off the charts. It's it's really the keys to football, and that's just the way it is.
Well, moving on from my happiness, we're going to go on to your happiness.
We just got a letter. We just got a letter. We just got a letter. Wonder who it's from.
Yes, the mailbag of the week. Cha 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 cha.
Why do you have to ruin everything, Dean?
I don't think I'm ruining it. All right, let's calm down here. So, we do have a question this week. We had two, but gonna skip one of them because one of them was more or less a comment on a slight on me. So we're not gonna include that one because I hate everyone. It is a very good question, and we're gonna shift out of the NFL for a little bit, go to another sport in the baseball realm. As always, Derick, gonna hand it off to you first and foremost for you to answer the question in an intelligent, not, and methodical, not way. So just kind of get that little hamster wheel rolling, and I'm gonna give you the question here. In baseball, given the offseason and how it's gone, are the Dodgers bad for baseball, or is it just that small market owners aren't spending? What's the problem? Is it the Dodgers spending too much, or is it smaller teams and even middle market teams at this point not spending at all?
Wow, that's a tough question. That's a very tough question. It's a very good one too. That's probably by far one of my favorite ones. But first of all, I want to say one thing: fuck the Dodgers. But the the people I have to blame for this is not the Dodgers. I would have to blame the middle market teams, purely because I feel like they're not putting in as much effort as they should for these big players. Like for example, the Pittsburgh Pirates. That team systematically gives away their best players. For example, they gave away Garrett Cole and etc. And just recently, they signed Brian Reynolds to a team high, I don't even know, of $182 million or 100 something million dollars. I don't remember exactly how much it was. But it just shows how if you're a small team like the Pirates, like the Athletics, or like all these other small market teams, by you not putting out the money to make your team better, it's gonna not want make other players stay on the team. Like for example, going back with the Pirates, is that they had a chance to sign Garrett Cole, and they didn't. It said let him go, and now he is on the Yankees. Which don't get me wrong, I'm very happy about, but it's overall you just need if these small market teams put actual money that they have, because it's not like they don't have the money. If they put the money in, they could get the players and build their team off of. But overall, they're just afraid of spending money, which makes no fucking sense.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm going to start off by saying I actually do agree with you. I think it's on small and middle market teams to spend more money. The MLB has been continuously climbing in revenue year in and year out. Their views are up, their revenue is up, and this is a pull to all owners, right? So owners on every single Major League Baseball team are making money. So there is absolutely no reason that some of these small market teams, like the Pittsburgh Pirates, should not be spending money, right? Or the Los Angeles Angels, right? Or the Baltimore Orioles, right? So these teams, they need to cut out the checkbook. It's as simple as that, right? I will say on the off flip side of that, the Dodgers payroll is pretty crazy, right? For the first time in 2025, their luxury tax payroll is going to exceed $375 million. And that is $70 million more than the next closest team, which will be the Philadelphia Phillies as of this moment, right? They've made some insane offseason signings. Blake Snell, 182 million. Tanner Scott, 72 million. Teoscar Hernandez, 66. Blake Trine, 22. Tommy Edmonds, 74 million. And that's not to mention Roki Sasaki or even Michael Conforto, for the love of God, right? I think it solely depends on the owner. This is a team who just won the World Series. A lot of times when you win a World Series, right, you get complacent. You think the team you have can win it again and again. The Dodgers, their owner, fuck that. He's got a money printing machine in the locker room that Shohei Ohtani's interpreter from jail is running right now. And you think he gives a shit? He's going out there and improving an already World Series championship team. I don't want to hear it that these small market teams can't spend money, right? You're telling me you're telling me that a Pittsburgh Pirates team can't spend $66 million on Teoscar Hernandez when they just shoveled out their biggest contract in their history to Brian Reynolds for less than $150 million total? Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, right? I do give props to at least the Oakland A's a little bit. They spent money this offseason. They're still going to suck ass, but they spent money.
They're trying. They're trying to be better.
They're working towards better things, moving to Las Vegas, all that shit, right? They at least spent some money. Maybe not on the right guys. Would I have given Severino that kind of money? No. But good for him. He went out there, got his bag. Good for the Oakland A's spending some money. That's what you should do to improve your baseball team, because baseball, as compared to a lot of other sports, it's a team game. It is truly one of those sports where you need a full team in order to be good in baseball, and it's probably one of the most competitive sports, maybe next to hockey. You only have to make a couple of moves here and there to really improve your team. Like, for example, and I'm going to give you a perfect example on this one, right? The 2024 Detroit Tigers. Take a guess, Derick, at what their yearly payroll was. You know what? You're not even going to get it. Bottom 5 in the league, less than 100 million. Less than 100 million. And it was 96 million. Bottom 5 in the league, and they made it to the playoffs. You don't need to spend money to make it to the playoffs. You just need to spend money in the right places and have talented players. And it especially goes for some of these teams where they have to retain talent. You mentioned it. Perfect example. Look at the Pittsburgh Pirates. Garrett Cole, Tyler Glasnow. I mean, these are prime time guys that you're just letting go because you're too cheap to spend money.
It's absolutely sickening them not spending money.
It's sickening. You know what? If you don't want to spend money and you just want to rake it in as an owner, how about you trade the team? How about you sell the team? You're still going to make a pretty penny, and you can go die somewhere in a ditch. I feel bad for Pirates. I feel bad for Pirates fans because you know what's the inevitable is next, right? In 2-3 years, they're not going to want to sign Paul Skeens, and he's going to get traded.
Please, God, go to the Yankees. Please, God, go to the Yankees.
And if I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, I am quite literally taking a torch and burning down the stadium.
That's just going to be a crater. If they don't sign Paul Skeens, that's just going to be a crater.
It's disgraceful. Another perfect example, not to cut you off, the Baltimore Orioles, right? Won the division this year, back-to-back playoff years where you have a ton of young talent. What did you do this offseason? Who did you sign? You signed a 40-year-old Japanese pitcher. You lost Anthony Santander. You lost Corbin Burns. You lost pretty much everybody who was a free agent. I'm sure Baltimore fans are feeling pretty damn good right now. I think the problem is those lower tier teams. That's my thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dean, with like the Baltimore Orioles, them not capitalizing on the opportunities they had, but like it's just so stupid how these small market teams, like, they don't want to improve their teams. It's like they're not get. I understand that you don't want to spend all the money and bury your team in cap and shit, but that's how you have to be sometimes. Like the Seattle Mariners, for example, they're a pretty good team. They just need little pieces, but you need to buy these big players like the Rockies, like the Sotos, or like all these big market players to make your team better. Otherwise, it's not gonna help you. Like even if fucking Texas, the Texas Rangers, if they got Roki, they would be a completely different team. But instead, they sat there and they just did nothing. It's annoying to see teams not put in full effort on making their team better.
Yeah, look, money doesn't always correlate wins. It's been proven, especially this past year, bottom tier teams in terms of payroll making the playoffs, Milwaukee, Baltimore, Cleveland, Detroit. And then on the flip side of things, top 10 teams in payroll not making the playoffs. And the Atlanta Braves, the Chicago Cubs, the Texas Rangers, the Toronto Blue Jays, the San Francisco Giants. Money doesn't always correlate to wins. But if you spend money in the right places, you're going to bring in more fans. You're going to make that revenue back very quickly. The one caveat I have to this question, and by the way, I found the name Hector in Queens. Thank you, Hector. You're you're a good man. We appreciate you giving us a baseball question because football can always get a little, repetitive. The one caveat I want to see in the CBA in the next 2 years, when it is up, I do want to see the MLB take away deferrals. I don't mind a team spending money. I really don't. If the Dodgers want to go out there and spend 500 million, if their owner's willing to do that, good for him. Go do your thing, guy. I don't even give a shit. It's the deferrals that are an issue, right? Where a team has the opportunity a 10-year, $700 million contract and push it off to the next 20 years. That's where my biggest issue is. And that's where I think that's where I think the discrepancy is going to be in the CBA in the next 2-3 years. But yes, great question, Hector. Hector, you are the man. Sorry I couldn't find your name. It got lost within my notes. Everybody, keep commenting. TikTok is back. Keep commenting on TikTok. Keep commenting on YouTube, Instagram, Derick's MySpace page, wherever you have to comment, right? We're going to look at them. We're going to answer. Thank you, Hector. You're a good man.
Thank you, Hector, for the question. I appreciate it because it actually made me think. And leading into that, I feel like moving on from Dean's mailbag, we got to go on to my new topic or new segment that I'm bringing in. Derick's thoughts.
Derick's thoughts.
Let's bring it on, bitch.
All right, Dean. So the first question I have for you is, should the NFL switch to college football overtime rules?
No. Next question.
All right, Dean. Chill. The reason why I'm saying this is just how the NFL has gone these past couple of years is no one has been happy with the way overtime is. There's always been a problem with it.
But the NFL already changed their overtime rule in the playoffs. Both teams now have an opportunity to possess the ball regardless of touchdowns. Plus, in the college football format, right? If this goes to a third or fourth overtime, I'm going to kill myself if an NFL playoff game is determined by 2-point conversions. So screw your hamster wheel. Tell him to get off. Next question.
One thing I will say is that I understand where you're coming from with, obviously they did just change it, But they don't have to implement this in the playoffs. They can keep the same playoff format, but just implement it in the regular season.
I despise everything that happens within your brain.
All right, Dean. The next question I have for you is: should college basketball change the age to enter the draft?
Bit of a loaded question. It's tough to answer because we've had some great players go one and done within college, and it's kind of hard to think of them having a second year within college before going into the NBA. Not to mention one of, if not the greatest NBA player of all time, and LeBron James didn't even go to college. And they changed that you can't just go from high school to the NBA. I'm going to say no again for this one. I think 1 year and done is fine. A lot of these kids have so much talent where this isn't the NFL, right? Where you need to gain some sort of experience, whether it comes to different schemes in football, whether it comes to, learning defenses and all that, right? I don't think it's like that. I think within the NBA, if you can score, you can score. If you can pass the ball, you can pass the ball. If you could rebound, if you could defend, you can do all these things, and you'll learn as you go. Some of these players in the NBA are having some growing pains, and that's fine, right? You learn it in the first couple of years, but that also prolongs your career when it comes to the NBA. These kids are coming into the NBA at the age of 19 and 20, and I think that's honestly for the best for them. Not only do they get a nice payday, but they have hands-on learning experience within the best players in the world, right? That look, I mean, for example, like just for example, look at Cade Cunningham. Guy had a mediocre first year. The guy is lighting up the NBA now. I just think that much different than the NFL, where the NFL, these kids are struggling out of college, even after staying in 2, 3 years, because their mental game isn't up to speed. Perfect example. Look at Caleb Williams. So that's my opinion. I think the one and done in college basketball is perfectly fine. I think it's all right. If anything, eliminate it. Allow players to go from high school right to the pros.
So you want them to bring back the format from 03, 08 of them bringing them back, going from high school to the
No,
NBA.
I'm kidding. I would never have it just high school again. No, but there's never gonna be another LeBron James. One and done is fine by me.
All right, I understand. I understand what you're saying, Dean. To where that it should. They're obviously going to be going against the pros. They're going to be in the big leagues when they're playing. But I feel that, for example, R.J. Barrett, he was drafted by the Knicks early, and his first couple of seasons were rough. So maybe if he stayed in college, those extra 2 years or extra year, maybe that would make him better. How I see it is that there's no problem in staying in for an extra year or two to see, hey, maybe I could be better than what I am. Because overall, all these kids want to do is just be the best version of themselves. They want to be the best player they can be. So, for example, like if someone was projected top 16, right? They look and they're like this. I want to be better. I want to be in the top 10, top no, within the top 10 or top 5. Then these players can stay that extra year, not go into the draft that year, and then grind and then work towards being that top pick and being the best version of themselves.
That's fine. I get it, right? But I think, well, there's two situations here, right? One, I do think college players are going to stay a little bit longer anyway now because of the new NIL deals where you can actually get paid. So I think that'll help college players stay longer and develop a little bit more. Two, I think it's very heavily dependent on the player, right? If a player wants to go into the draft, even if his agent, even if his coaches are telling him you're not going to be a top 10 pick, you're probably not going to convince him otherwise. If he's so set on going into the NBA and making his bank right away, I don't think it's going to matter what you tell him. Right? Look, another example in the NFL, look at Bo Nix. He stood longer and it worked out for him. Some of these players, it's dependent on what they feel is best for them and their development. I don't think it's up to a league to tell them what to do and what not to do.
One thing I will say though, Dean, is that there's a bunch of top picks that get drafted so early, and then they just vanish into thin air, like they're gone.
Well, that's every sport.
Like for example, Zion Williamson was an example of he should have went in to the draft when he should have. He was the best player in college, and he should have pushed towards going into the NBA.
Yeah, but him particularly, like all those injury concerns, with would him staying in college an extra 2 years have healed those injury concerns? Probably not. It's it's dependent on the player. It's dependent on the system. Every single league, whether it's the NHL, NBA, NFL, MLB, they all have busts when it comes to their top picks. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. There's no amount of time in college that they could have stayed. They're going to be busts no matter what. Then on the flip side of that, it doesn't matter how long they stay in college, there's going to be superstars. That's just my opinion.
I do think that there should be an extension to it in a way, but I also get your point to where it does depend on the player, because if you're the best player, why not go into the draft? But it would benefit the people who are projected in late first round or early second round. They could skyrocket to the top 10 to where they can make the actual big money that they want for their lives. All right, Dean, so moving on from my thoughts,
God, your brain is just so fucked up.
I asked you this one question. I know we touched on it a little bit with obviously Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, but in your opinion, who do you think was the best NFL coach hire and the worst NFL coach hire?
Oh, well, I mean, keep in mind for everybody who's out there, there are still quite a few teams who are still looking for, head coaching. What Dallas is still looking for head coach. Jacksonville is still looking. The Raiders are still looking. But as of right now, the ones who have been hired, which are only a few, mind you, right? Ben Johnson to Chicago, Aaron Glenn to the Jets, Mike Vrabel to the New England Patriots. I think the best one is Mike Vrabel, and I realize that's an obvious pick just because of the fit there. But I think some of these other teams just benefit from having a veteran coach, especially New England, who has Drake May, your franchise quarterback, who has over $100 million in cap space, who has a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. This is the time to really zone in on your future. So I think some of these teams, like for example, big hire was Chicago. This is basically Caleb Williams' development right here. If this hire sucks, your franchise sucks. That's the way it is. Right? Because if the hire sucks, then Caleb sucks, then my God, you're back to square one and you're the Chicago Bears again. The Jets is a little different because once they do finalize a deal with the GM, who I believe it's going to be the assistant GM to the Commanders at the moment, but they're still working on those details. They're kind of in a little bit of a rebuild. They have to decide whether they want to keep Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams or let them go and trade them. They have to pretty much decide the next steps for the organization. Ben Johnson was a little different. Those next steps are already panned out. Mike Vrabel's a little different. Those next steps are pretty much panned out when it comes to the quarterback position, but you have some free range elsewhere. So, my opinion, I think Vrabel's the best hire as of right now. I think things can change because of how many different coaching opportunities there still are out there. But yeah, Vrabel's my best so far, and my worst so far is the New York Giants for keeping it the same. And that's my TED Talk.
I do agree that Vrabel is a great coach, and I do think he is one of the best hires, but my opinion for the best hire so far is Ben Johnson, purely because this is Caleb Williams' best chance to succeed, even though fuck Caleb Williams, that short little fuck. I just think that he was put into the best case scenario because of the team he's surrounded around. He has DJ Moore, all these assets on his team to where he has the chance to make his team better. One thing I will say though is the worst one is also the Giants for keeping Dable, because it is what it is. Another thing is that also this will actually make my year, is if this happens, is if the Cowboys hire Schottenheimer, because when Schottenheimer was with the Cowboys, they were the fifth worst offense in the league, and if that happens, that just brings me some happiness.
Dallas doesn't concern me as long as Jerry Jones is alive, and my God, I hope they have him in an incubator and he stays alive till he's 107. However, Ben Johnson, I do agree, right? He does have a lot of offensive weapons. Caleb, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Dunze, DeAndre Swift, right? He's got some very good offensive options. I think they have to really focus in on one, Caleb's decision making. How much of a leap from year one to year two is Caleb going to take? This is a new offense. I get it, right? It sucks after your first year in the league to be going to a completely new offense, but I think it will be for the best for him. So you got to really get those decision-making abilities out when instead of taking a sack for 27 yards, how about you throw the ball away, right, Caleb? Right? Yeah, good. Good boy. Secondly, I think they do have to make a few changes on the offensive line because Caleb just can't be running around back there like a chicken with his head cut off. They need to protect him a little bit. So I do agree with you. It has the potential to be a very good signing, but at the same time, if Caleb does not take a step forward in year two, it doesn't matter who was signed.
So, Dean, what if this season it doesn't work out for Caleb Williams?
It'll be a coach's issue because you're not going to bench the former number one overall pick. I mean, look, this coach was brought in with the expectation that Caleb is going to be the guy, and I'm sure ownership told him Caleb is the guy. The only way Caleb is not the guy with Ben Johnson at the helm over the next 2 or 3 years is if the Bears suck ass next year and get a first or second overall pick. And then you actually have to start considering taking another quarterback and sending Caleb back to where he came from. So it has the potential to be one of the best coaching hires, but I think it's very dependent on the quarterback.
Yeah, just going off of like the coaches, is that like there's still a lot of teams who still need coaches.
A lot of teams. I think some of the biggest. Let's be honest here. Dallas is still the biggest one out there because of just what they're able to do. But I think the Vegas one is still very interesting because of some of the things that we've said about New England. So much cap space. Top 10 pick in this upcoming draft. They just need a quarterback. There's a lot of opportunity on that team. I'm very curious to see who they pick for head coach over there.
All right, so moving on from obviously the coaches, we have to move on to our favorite segment as a group, which is our picks, our conference championship picks. Obviously, this week it's going to be different because there's only 2 teams that we're going off of. But obviously, if it's still up to you, we can still do the spreads and stuff.
So it's up to you, Derek. How do you want to do this? Do we want to choose a lock of the week, or how about instead me and you just choose who our Super Bowl is going to be from the next 4 teams?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, cool. So we'll get into it, right? There, like Derek said, 2 games, conference championships, baby, both on Sunday, one at 3 p.m. Eastern, one at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll go with the NFC Championship first. The Washington Commanders will be traveling their little butts all the way to Philadelphia. Philadelphia Eagles are favored right now by 6 points. Derek, who are you taking and why?
This game was honestly so tough for me to pick. Obviously, the Eagles are my favorite team. But it is a divisional game. We have played the Commanders twice. It's going to be a close game, which is why I think that I'm taking the Commanders plus 6.5.
Okay. Commanders plus 6. Interesting. Might as well keep the trend going. I'm going to the opposite end of you. I'm going Philadelphia Eagles minus 6. The Commanders that have had one hell of a run. I commend them extensively. Good for them. They have a bright future ahead of them with Jaden Daniels at the helm. I think this is where it comes to the end. I think the Eagles defense is tremendous, to say the least. I think they're going to hold them and their offense to not a lot of points here. I think the Eagles win pretty handedly. I think the 6 points is a little low, if you want my opinion.
The only problem for this game for me is that injuries. For example, we lost our linebacker. Quinyon Mitchell got injured in the last game. And a bunch of other injuries on our defensive front, on our defense in general. Because that's what we've seen all the year, is that our defense has been so good and has helped us with our offense. But if we don't have all those players in this big game, it could affect us, which is why I picked the Commanders plus 6.5.
All right, cool. Now we will head on to the AFC Championship. The Buffalo Bills will be heading over once again. Seems like it's a normal thing over here now. To Kansas City to play the Chiefs in Arrowhead. The Chiefs are favored by 1.5 points. An extremely tight line. I think it's extremely warranted. Derek, what are you thinking?
This one was pretty tough for me. I honestly think that, well, I hope, it's honestly me hoping, I hope that the Bills win this game. And I do think they can because the way Josh Allen has been playing, which is why I'm taking the Bills plus 2.5.
Okay. I'm going to agree with you for once in my life. Not that the Bills win. I'm going to take Bills plus 1.5, and I think the Chiefs win the game by 1. I think the Chiefs win the game on a winning field goal by Harrison Butker as time expires. This is inevitable. So I'm going to take the Bills plus 1.5, and then shockingly enough, I'm going to go first and say my Super Bowl prediction. I'm going to go Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs, a rematch, and I'm going to say it's going to be the same exact thing as last time, where the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Philadelphia Eagles, and they go on to get their little three-peat, and they officially have a dynasty. That's just my opinion, and that will be my prediction.
First of all, Dean, I hate you. I hope that really doesn't happen.
Yep, that's my prediction, sir.
Honestly, my prediction for the Super Bowl is the Eagles versus the Bills. And the team who I have winning is the Eagles, purely because our defense has been so good this year that if it is healthy and if we do play very well, I think we're able to stop Josh Allen.
Okay. All right. I see you want my nightmare scenario to come to fruition, and I respect that. I respect that. And you're an Eagles fan, and it made sense for you to take them, so I get it. I get it. Oh, it's gonna be so nice seeing the Eagles lose in the Super Bowl. It's gonna be fun.
If the Eagles lose in the Super Bowl to the Chiefs again this year, don't speak to me, don't look at me, don't text me, don't call me, don't even look at me. Obviously, in the coming weeks, it's going to be the Super Bowl, to where it's just going to be two teams, and we can't do spreads there. It's just not going to be fun. So what me and Dean are going to do, it's just a thought that I have, is that we're going to implement props in this, to where if we could do anytime touchdown score or yards or something like that, and what we're going to do is at the end, we're going to create a slip for anyone who wants could use that slip and use that to bet on.
Don't put your money on it. I wouldn't even put your hard-earned dollar on it. I would maybe take a dump, and that'll be the end of that. But yeah, that'll be fun to give the people our props and inevitably be wrong. But that'll be fun.
It would be nice for other people to lose money and not just us.
Yes, for once we have to spread the misery.
Well, that concludes our conference championship picks. It's going to be exciting to see what's happening in the coming weeks. But now we got to introduce Dean's absolute favorite segment.
Baller of the week.
Baller of the week, as always. If you haven't watched by now, we choose a baller of the week who, a baller of the week. I don't have the brain capacity to explain it. I mean, if you need more explaining on that, then maybe you're a dumbass, or maybe you're as dumb as Derick. All right? So, that being said, Derick, would you like to start this week, or would you like me to start this week?
No, I'll have you start.
Okay. Wow, look at you taking the initiative. What a good man you are. Okay. Well, my baller of the week, for for anybody who didn't know, or any of our viewers who don't live within the United States, we did get a new president this week on Monday. But not what you think. My baller of the week is going to be Joseph Biden, who will be leaving office and inevitably, exiting politics at this point in his life. I just wanted to say thank you for the 40 years of contributions that you've given to the country. The 46th U.S. President of the United States. He's now 82 years old. He's definitely getting up there. Politics aside, Democrat or Republican, it's definitely something to commemorate 40 plus years of serving your country. So, did want to give him his flowers, and now he gets to go off into the sunset and eat all the ice cream he wants.
All right, so my baller of the week this week is kind of staying on the same standpoint that Dean was. I'm staying on the political side. Is Donald J. Trump. Obviously, there has been problems going on in the world, which does suck. But it is nice to see a new president come in to see maybe if some things can change. Obviously, he is I believe it's the third or fourth president to be in office two separate times with a separation in between. But it's good to see new things coming for the United States. And hopefully, by him coming into office, some things will change, and maybe this world or the United States in general can be united again. That's pretty much what I said in like a smaller format. And then I'm just going to take like a 2-second break. Because I'm going to say, because I don't remember what Dean said, if he said anything else. I could use these, right?
Use what? Yeah, those are other.
Stay tuned. It's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to talking about hockey, basketball, baseball off-season continuing. A bit tennis, so stay tuned. It's going to be a good time. Derick did miss one that... No, looking...
Overall, that's the end of Baller of the Week, and unfortunately, that's the end of this episode. Oh, overall, that concludes the Baller of the Week, Dean's favorite segment, and it concludes the episode to where I'm at the home stretch.
The outro is always the hardest. The outro and the intros are the hardest, Derick.
I got the intro in one try.
Outros and intros. My point still stands.
Overall, that concludes this episode of the podcast. In the coming weeks, obviously, the Super Bowl is going to be coming up, and a bunch of other stuff around the world. We're not going to be speaking about the Pro Bowl, because fuck the Pro Bowl. But we are going to be speaking about, obviously, introducing new sports, basketball, hockey, more baseball, and more things to come. Obviously, TikTok is back, which helps us out. But, Dean, do you have anything else you want to say?
Yes, the United States is definitely taking a turn from one president to another, from Democrat to Republican. Very going to be curious to see how the next 4 years go, and hopefully he serves our nation well.
Overall, that concludes this episode of the podcast. In the coming weeks, obviously, the Super Bowl is going to be coming up, and a bunch of other stuff around the world. We're not going to be speaking about the Pro Bowl, because fuck the Pro Bowl. But we are going to be speaking about, obviously, introducing new sports, basketball, hockey, more baseball, and more things to come. Obviously, TikTok is back, which helps us out. But, Dean, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, looking forward to the next few weeks. We obviously do have the Super Bowl coming up, but yes, we will be getting into more sports. Derick did miss one that I will be forcing onto next week's podcast, which will be tennis, so stay tuned. It's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to talking about hockey, basketball, baseball off-season continued, and yes, Derick, the Australian Open in tennis. So I'm looking forward to it. Should be a fun NFL off season. We're not there yet, but one last thing. Let's hope for the Eagles' downfall.
Fuck you, you piece of shit. Obviously, like, subscribe, follow us on TikTok. TikTok is back. Thank you, God. And peace.